Welcome to The Spoonful Show. I'm Rachel, and this is a space for real conversations about chronic illness, hope, and learning to keep going even on the hardest days. Because strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's simply taking life one spoon at a time. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Spoonful Show. I'm your host, Rachel. Today I'm joined by Lorraine Ansell. Lorraine is an author, speaker, content creator, and chronic pain advocate who was diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers Danlos syndrome, or HEDS. Through her work, Lorraine shares a unique perspective on what it takes to live with chronic pain and adapting to an ever-changing body and what she calls cooperating with reality. In today's conversation, we're going to talk about chronic pain, pacing, creativity, self-awareness, and how learning to listen to our bodies can help us build life alongside illness rather than constantly fighting against it. Let's welcome in Lorraine. Thank you, Lorraine, for being on the Spoonful Show. I'm so happy that you're here with me today.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about chronic pain, which so many of us deal with. And we're going to talk about your book called The Surrender Agenda. So let's start here. For listeners who are meeting you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to diagnosis?
Yes, so my journey starts when I was actually little, as a toddler. And my family realized this. I would have multiple bruises. I would injure myself in very silly ways. My ankles would knock together and they would bleed. I didn't crawl as a baby. I just sort of slithered along and then stood up one day. And my life has had many little odd incidents happen to me medically, things that I never really sort of, when I fell over, I would fall over a lot. I would never heal from the injuries when I did fall over. They took a long time to heal. I ended up needing glasses at about the age of 8 or 9. I would see a physio for my knees because my knees were hurting, and I was told it was growing pains. And then at 15, I saw a consultant because of scoliosis. And sort of this list kind of went on, but I was living my life. And finally, in my early 40s, so this is sort of a year or two after lockdown, I'm finally diagnosed with a condition called hypermobile Ehlers Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. And this means that my collagen is stretchier than most people. And with that, at my diagnosis, which was a surprise to me, I started to realize maybe there is more to this, because I'd gone back and forth to the doctors with tummy troubles, with teeth troubles, with eyesight issues. And I had had blood tests done and hormone tests done, and nobody could really figure out what was going on. I would get out of breath. So what did I do? I thought I was unfit and I joined another dance class or another gym class. And so during lockdown, I started to realize other creators had other similar stories to me. And so I ended up writing to my doctor, my first local doctor, and then they referred me to the hospital. And that's when I got my diagnosis. The interesting thing with the diagnosis, something I wasn't expecting, was to be told that I was in pain, and I had probably experienced pain since I was a toddler, which was a huge surprise and a shock to me. Because I thought all of these sensations I had felt in my feet and my knees and my hips and my back and my shoulders and my head, I thought everyone felt that. So that is a short, long way to explain what has happened to me.
That's so interesting that pain was so normal for you that you didn't even recognize it because it had been going on for so long. So how did you finally recognize that was pain, and kind of what was your relationship with pain during that time of kind of figuring out what these feelings were?
Well, prior to starting on this pain journey, I assumed, like everyone else, that To be in pain was to be screaming, like, lashing out, acting it out in absolute agony. And for a lot of my life, I haven't felt that. And so I thought, well, I'm not in pain then. So I had taken my cue from a lot of medical professionals, from my family, from society. And I truly thought that, well, I can't be in pain. So, the fact that I have felt like my feet burn as if I've run a marathon all the time, ever since I've a toddler. It's my first memory. And I had to relearn this. I had to unlearn what I thought pain was to relearn what it actually is for me. And the fact that I have been living with a pain level of about 4 or 5, a daily pain level, and it just is always constantly there. And so I had to start a new relationship. I had to start a new language with pain. And all everyone kept talking about was like, how do we battle pain? How do we, fight against the pain? But when you realize you have had chronic pain all of your life, how can you fight yourself? How can you battle against yourself? And so I wanted to find a new way. I wanted a new conversation. I wanted a new relationship because, well, I hadn't had a good relationship for 40 years. So I thought maybe I need to start doing something differently.
Let's talk a little bit about that, fighting pain. And when did you realize that fighting pain wasn't helping? And how did you kind of adjust your thinking on that?
That's a really good question. I feel for me, because I had always had this message, just push on. The burn it's working. Just keep going. And I had been that person. I would push on through migraines and headaches, and I really don't advise you ever do any of these things. But I didn't know. I really didn't know. And so I did push on, unwittingly causing more damage, more pain, more issues, and more fatigue as well. So I really needed to stop and take account and become more self-aware. And that's when I started to have a different understanding and awareness of pain and what it is for me and where I want to be with pain. It's still a skill that I'm learning because I've just started on this journey a few years ago. But I also realized that society, if we're not battling it, it's almost like you're doing it wrong. And I had this feeling that it was all the messages were like, just push through, just battle through. And I thought to myself, well, no, I need to, I think for me, I'm a lover. And how can I battle against something or ignore something that is fundamentally part of me? It's not going away. It's not acute pain. This is chronic pain, which is a totally different type of pain. Mm-hmm. And this is when I started to realize that I would have to accept it. This isn't going away. This isn't a growing pains like they told me when I was 14, that I would grow out of it. No, if I'm still growing, then I've got these pains. Mm-hmm. And so this is when things started to shift with me because I realized, no, I have to enter a different relationship here because it hasn't worked before. So something needs to change now.
When you had years and years where you didn't recognize pain, and then suddenly there was a name to it, did you start realizing the levels of pain and recognizing what felt better and what didn't? Because I imagine if you went all these years of not knowing what it was, and then you find out, and then I imagine maybe getting ease of pain, you start kind of realizing those ups and downs.
I started to realize, when I went off to university and I got a first proper job in my early 20s, that the pace of life was really busy. And I remember working and going out. And I would see my peers. They were going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, midnight, 1 o'clock. And I was like thinking, well, 9 o'clock is already quite late for me. What's going on? So I started to gently question this as well. And it wasn't really until I met my boyfriend, now husband, that question started to be more, because he would say things like, you can't be that tired from doing this walk. And it wasn't ever done in a bad way, these questions, but it started to make me realize, because he would be confused and then I would be confused at his confusion. Like, well, no, of course I'm tired. It's like, but should you be tired? We haven't really walked that much, and so thanks to him as well, I started to, I would start to bounce off questions. What do you mean? Why? How can you do 6 activities in the day and I can only do 2, and I need to sit down in between them and have another snack? So there were multiple layers of realization, and now I sort of realized that in my family we had normalized a lot of things, from even the pain, because I'm sure a lot of my family members also have perhaps this condition. I'm the only one diagnosed. But I realized how much we had adapted.
Your book, again, is called Surrender Agenda. What does surrendering mean? You talk about, fighting the pain and kind of learning to surrender to the pain. What does that mean for you?
A lot of people perhaps think surrender is giving up.
Right.
But for me, surrender is taking a moment to pause, to think, to reflect, and to find strength in the acceptance of it. It's not easy to be told, you've always been in pain, you will always therefore be in pain. And I wanted to enter a new chapter because things couldn't go on like they did before. I couldn't push through. And I started to learn that really doesn't work for me. So what does work for me? If all of these things don't work, what can work? And this is when I decided to look at pain in a curious way. Why is this pain like this? When does this pain happen? How is this pain lasting so long? And I realized by being extra curious about it, and not asking why in an antagonistic way, but just asking, just why? Why should it be this way? I started to shift my thought process and my feelings and my attitudes toward myself. And I started to understand and listen to my cues my body was saying. Am I tired? Am I thirsty? Do I need the toilet? And sometimes you think, oh, well, these are very basic cues, but sometimes we distract ourselves from them. We override that. And then the body can get very angry with us and start to shout and scream, and then your pain levels can increase. So for me, it was really going back to basics and understanding, what do I need now?
It's so important, because I feel like for me, when I'm having days where I'm in a lot of pain, I find that my body kind of just stiffens up and just is fighting to get through it. And instead of relaxing and trying to figure out what do I need right now? And so I think that's really important, because it certainly doesn't help me when I'm just, balled up and
Yeah.
and what are some of the different techniques that you use as far as kind of letting go and listening to yourself?
Yes, and it starts from nighttime. In the night, I have a especially spongy pillow to reduce my neck pain, and because otherwise I can get migraines from sleeping. I wake myself up with a migraine.
Oh my.
I laugh at that. I think laughter is a great medicine.
Yeah.
And you have to laugh, because what do you mean sleeping isn't refreshing? No, it's not refreshing for me. But, it starts with, making sure that my shoulders are supported in bed. And if I can get as good as a sleep as I can possibly get, then hopefully this is the start to a good day. But then it's asking myself, okay, can we get out of bed? Do we want to get out of bed? I invite you to get out of bed. And it's always listening. Whereas before I would have listened and then just ignored, I'm listening. Do I want to get out of bed? Can I get out of bed? Can I have the shower? And at each point I'm listening for that feedback to say, can I progress to the next step? Can I do the thing that I actually want to do today? For me, my main aims throughout the day is to eat and hydrate myself and to do all the body things that we need to do. That already is a success.
Mm-hmm.
And by making that the level of success, that helps my brain say, oh, well, we're fantastic today. We've done all of the things. Does it matter that, the house isn't cleaned or you haven't done your chores or any of this? No, that's gone. And it's finding a different way, planning the week differently. I've realized that my energy levels are really good in the morning. So that's when I plan to do most of the things. And I know at lunchtime and the afternoon, I will have to rest. Mm-hmm. I can clearly see that that's how my rhythm is. And that's what works for me. When I have good moments and I have the energy, then I'll batch cook. I'll do lots of cooking to prepare things because I love food. Mm-hmm. I love food. But there are times when I don't have the energy to feed myself, and I want to eat my food that I like to eat. So I will prepare that, and so everything becomes like an exercise in efficiency. How can I shortcut things so that I can have the things I still like? Yeah. And a big part of it is accepting. Like today, I do have a headache because I think I lifted something a little bit too heavy, maybe in the slightly wrong way. And so I'm actually holding, I don't know if your listeners will be able to view this, but I'm actually holding my head up. Mm-hmm. I've got my elbow on the table. I'm just holding my head up because this is a really nice position for my head.
My goodness.
But this is because I've listened to myself and I'm like, what might I need now? And if I just hold my head here, that's interesting because that really works.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're not feeling well. You bring up so many good points about pacing and not overdoing it. And that is something that I hear from a lot of people. It's something I've struggled with too, is really pacing. And I love how you plan your week and know when your highs and your lows are. And it's such good advice to be able to say, okay, this is what I need to do this time, and really kind of scheduling out, because we all know what happens when you push through, and it's never a good idea,
No, exactly. It really isn't. And there are times that, like, for instance, at the weekend, I went to a movement event where there was a sound bath and I met some friends, because these things are good for you, good for the soul, good for connection, good for community. Mm. But I knew it'd be a long day. So I did pace myself beforehand and afterwards. And I think having that knowledge and that planning helps you. And I built in space during the day. So there would be rest periods that I wouldn't overwhelm myself, that I could, I had to go up on a train. So I put my ear plugs in, I put my sunglasses on. I tried to minimize the amount of stimulation I would have so that I could last longer throughout the day. So yeah, it's just, I find what's worked for me is looking at everything, really going back to basics and really admitting what those basics are, which for me is, hydrating and eating.
I'm going to stop here real quick. If you're living with something people don't see, POTS, multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, or anything like it, I made some t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hoodies just for you, so you don't have to explain it. You can find them at spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. I know for many of us, being in just constant pain can be really overwhelming. And especially mentally, I'm just dealing with it over and over. And I know I've had those thoughts of like, could I have please 5 minutes where I feel great? And then I'll go back, I promise. But
yes,
it never works, but you got to try. But how do you deal with the overwhelming, like, mental part of just always feeling that pain?
It's something that people don't really realize or talk about, is just how draining that part is. Mm-hmm. And I do find it draining. I find it frustrating. I find the process of grieving constantly is overwhelming. And I allow myself that feeling. Is it sticky? Is it not a nice sensation? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do I like it? No. But I grieve because I feel the grief needs to be expressed. It needs to also be acknowledged. And once I'm able to do that, then I can move on. Then I can honor it, honor and say, yes, I've paid attention to you. Yes, it is awful. I agree.
Mhm.
What helps me is knowing, I mean, I would love that. Like you said, I would love just 5 minutes,
Yeah.
a weekend away, a little weekend holiday. Just turn it off, just turn it down, just a little bit. And that's a fantasy, isn't it? Wouldn't
Oh.
that be a lovely thing?
Yes. Yes. Or
And
give it to my husband for 5 minutes and, let him feel
oh,
it for a little bit. And then, I can feel as good as he does for just 5 minutes.
just 5
Yeah.
minutes. It's not too much to
No,
ask,
it's
is
not.
it?
It's not. Yeah.
Yes, I often say I'd quite like a holiday. Just if Payne and I could just take separate vacations, that
Yeah.
would be quite nice.
Yeah.
But we seem to be a dance partner. We're locked into a dance, a never-ending dance. And what helps me is to know that it's not constant, as in the level will never be constant. It does change. And if it's high one day or one moment, when you said, you want to curl up into a ball, yes,
Yeah.
yes, there are those moments. But then I know it ebbs and flows, and there'll be a moment when it won't be so bad. And I know the headache will leave, and I know the joint pain will lessen. And I know in summer, for example, my joints feel better. They don't really like the winter. So I know there's a season to it. But another part that helps me is I like to laugh. I like to find things to smile about. I like silly things. I like clever things. I really do feel that laughter is a really good medicine. And, like, for instance, just before I wear these thumb braces,
Uh-huh.
and I'd taken them off to wash my hands, and my husband brought them to me, and he said, here are your bunny rabbits, because without them they look like little bunny rabbits. And he said, oh, pink bunny rabbits. And that whimsical nature has taken something which you could think, oh no, you're wearing braces,
Right.
to something like, oh, I've got 2 little bunny rabbits on my hands, and I think that sort of mindset, that change for me, like even you just went, oh, that's so cute. And it is. So I'm always trying to visualize or map out ways to give myself like a whimsicalness to these things, because that just makes me feel more joyful.
So in your book, you talk about creativity as an anchor. So can you talk about that?
Yes. I am a hyper curious person, but I'm also very creative. I think they go hand in hand. My maternal grandmother was hugely creative. She had a gift. She could pick anything up. And one of her specialities, I always remember this, she would make copper wire trees with little like gem beading for the leaves. They're so beautiful. They look like little bonsai trees. And I always remember her doing knitting and crocheting and crafting. She was a fabulous cook. All self-taught pretty much, just all, she just picked it up. But one of the things I have found through creativity is that it's very satisfying for the mind. Extremely satisfying. You can set the mind going and it ticks over and it just enjoys this activity and it takes you away from yourself a little bit. So like we talked 5 minutes, just 5 minutes away. That for me is what creativity is doing. And for example, here you can see a peony, and this peony is made out of paper, and I made it. I went to a workshop to make it. And it was wonderful. I just lost myself for 3 hours just, making the crepe paper move this way and that way and gluing things together. And for me, creativity is a way we talk a lot about regulation of the system and soothing, but I think I have quite a busy mind. And so, deep breathing and sleeping doesn't really help me soothe and regulate. But what does is doing a mindful activity that's quite creative, especially when I'm using my hands. And that sort of work really helps the brain sort of satisfy its brainness. And then for the rest of us, for the body, just to take a little moment, a little rest, a break from, doing too much. because I think with creativity, you can be, it is just an expression of self, and you can get it wrong. And it's iterating, it's playing, and it's just fun. And we all need a bit of fun in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very similar in that when I was feeling better and doing better, I would do, painting signs and making wreaths, and it was all such good for my soul. And so, as many of us are just looking for something to kind of keep our minds going, and whether that be reading or whatever your body can handle. How does that help you relax in pain? What do you sort of see if you get into some sort of a creative project? What do you see in your body that kind of releases a little bit of that pain?
I feel that a lot of it is the pain enjoys it. It wants to take part. It wants to get involved. And whatever the reasons that pain is there, I feel it also needs a bit of a holiday. It needs a break. So part of me is always thinking, how can I honor pain in some way? How can I dance with the pain? I need to figure out how we're going to do this together. And I feel like something like doing a craft or art. I loved what you said about wreath making. It's just, that just sounds so great and wonderful. It's like an active process for pain. It has a channel, it has an outlet, it can express itself. And with all this awareness, I want pain to be able to express itself in this way. I don't want it to. I always think about pain a bit like an animal. Like I have a cat, a little pet cat, and she's very cute. And she's a rescue cat. She's 15 years old and very, very sweet. But I never forget she's a wild animal. Because she is. Because at 3 o'clock in the morning, she is, touching me in my nose and waking me up. And I feel pain is a bit like that. It can be very cute and lovely, and I'll take care of it. But I never forget that it's wild. There's a wildness to it.
We look at pain as the enemy, and the pain is doing this to me. And so I love being able to have even that creative mind of just saying, this is something that's a part of me. And it's got its little ticks and all of that, but being able to view it as something more than the pain that it's causing you.
Exactly. And it's working with the pain, like sort of integrating it.
Yeah.
Rather than like pushing it away. It's easy. So easy to push it away, because do we like that feeling? No. Of course not. It's painful. And it takes practice. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I'm learning to not beat myself up about it, to say, okay, well, we try again. We try tomorrow. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
Do you adjust your creativity based on how you're feeling that day? If you're having a particularly rough day, what are some go-tos that still works that creative button, but maybe less physical?
Yes. So there are times when pain is very loud and it's hard for creativity to come through when pain is set loud. But in those moments, I tend to accept that that's only temporary. And I try to be quite soft. And in terms of creativity, what I tend to do is what I find can be quite useful for me, and unless my hands start to hurt, is things like clay or plasticine. Because there's something about the tactile nature. You can do it when you're on the sofa or in bed. You can do it with your eyes closed, because, the plasticine particularly is very forgiving. You don't have to. I'm not aiming to, I don't know, make a perfect creature out of plasticine, but just to start. It's a bit like what do they call those squishy stress balls as well?
Yeah.
So there's that sort of pleasure in it, and it's just being very basic, very, very basic play, almost guided by the pain itself, and a bit like, I suppose, what a toddler does, where it can have a burst of energy and then it needs a nap or it needs a snack. And I'm very mindful of that. And so the creativity ebbs and flows with that. And sometimes when pain is at a lesser level, then I find myself being much more creative in terms of my writing. And I want to explore different themes and that sort of thing. So it's like riding a wave, like a wave of creativity and a wave of pain at the same time, like two surfboards at once, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. You write in your book about learning to love pain. That's a phrase that many people may find odd or may struggle with. So, can you talk about what that means for you?
Yes, it is. It is hard. This all stemmed from the idea of, well, everyone keeps telling me to fight against the pain. And because I'm always contrary, I thought, well, has anyone tried loving the pain? And I find that we live in a society where pain is dismissed by many medical professionals. We then learn to dismiss it ourselves. So we therefore end up perhaps not understanding the purpose of the pain. And yes, pain is painful. All of the emotions of frustration and grief and anger, all of these are painful, sticky emotions. But by ignoring them and being taught to ignore them and to feel ashamed of them, are we missing out on something? Are we dismissing ourselves? Are we gaslighting ourselves? Are we not fulfilling our full human experience by ignoring them? And so my question started to be, well, what's wrong with pain? Pain in itself is there. So why are we giving it some negative connotation? Why are we saying this is a wrong thing to feel? Pain obviously has a purpose. Pain is a signal. It's a warning. It's also an expression. And so then I started to think of it, like I mentioned before, like my cat. And I thought, well, if I give it a persona, because I think very visually, I think in sort of these ways, then perhaps I can start to have a relationship with pain. We can start to speak a language. And like my cat does not speak human, and I, as the human, do not speak cat. But somehow she gets everything she wants. If she's hungry, she tells me about it. If she's thirsty, she tells me about it. If she needs to get up in the middle of the night for any of these things, she tells me about it. And so I started to transfer that sort of relationship of my cat to pain and myself. What are we doing together? And that has been really interesting because I love my cat. And how can I not love something that is cute and wonderful? And I choose to look at pain in more of those ways. But of course, it's still a wild, ferocious animal. I'm okay. She thinks she's a panther, but really she's just a little cat. But, pain can be like this. Pain can think it's a big panther and be like hugely too loud. If you have chronic pain, you'll understand that, it can be very, very loud when actually maybe it's just a cute little cat. It's tiny. And I feel in this way, it allows me to be more understanding. And I think once you get to a level of understanding and acceptance and awareness, then that's love. And you offer it love by honoring it, by talking to it, by, okay, yes, I still don't speak cat and I still don't speak pain, but we're trying to work together. We're trying to figure it out together. And yes, I get migraines. Yes, I get, joint pain. Yes, I have all sorts of aches and pains all over. But when I talk about loving pain, this means that I'm more self-aware of my needs and my boundaries. So pain doesn't have to scream at me at the end. Pain can gently touch my nose like my cat and I can go. Whereas before it would have to scream and jump all over me. So I can anticipate the pain a little bit more. And like I said, it's a question of if we are at level 4 or 5, how can I just take it maybe one more level? How can I do something or not do something just so that I don't go 4, 5, 6?
Right.
So it's how can I understand myself and my body and my pain? And that's love. That's how I see it.
Can you tell our listeners where they can find your book, The Surrender Agenda, and where they can follow you online?
Yes, absolutely. So my book is available on Amazon. So if you just look for The Surrender Agenda, it's available there. And you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. On Instagram, I am Living LA Voice Art, and I do lots of skits, usually to musical theatre soundtracks, to showcase how I feel the experience of pain is like. And yeah, please do follow me if you like to, and that would be good to see if what my experience of pain are like yours.
Great. And we'll make sure and tag the book in the description of the podcast episode so everybody can find that. Thank you so much, Lorraine, for joining me today and sharing your story so openly. I think so many listeners, myself included, will connect with the daily chronic pain and having to adapt to life's challenges and finding ways to quiet that pain. I am so happy that you were able to make it on today, and I just thank you so much for sharing all this beautiful information.
Thank you very much for having me, Rachel. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you if you are listening, wherever you're listening. I hope some of these things that we've talked about have brought you some comfort and some ideas.
Mhm. Yes, I believe it will. I definitely do. I want to thank Lorraine for being here as my guest today on the Spoonful Show. I hope her story reminds you that when pain is part of the journey, there's still ways to find joy, creativity, connection, and meaning along the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And as always, thank you for saving some spoons to be with me today. Until next time, take care. Just a quick reminder, everything shared here is based on personal experiences. Please consult your doctor for your own care.